Let's cut to the chase. Should followers of Christ vote? As Christians, we're not just members of a church. We're citizens living in this world, tasked to make an impact wherever we are. While the Bible doesn't mention voting directly, it gives us principles that guide how we live and engage with society. Voting is not just a political act, it's a moral responsibility. The question isn't, should we vote? The real question is, why wouldn't we? If we are called to influence the world with God's truth, voting becomes part of that influence. Romans 13 tells us that governing authorities are placed by God. That means our role isn't to stay silent or detached, but to actively contribute to the shaping of society. Government isn't separate from God's kingdom. Everything belongs to Him. And the way we engage with the world matters. Now, some Christians hesitate to vote. They say, politics is corrupt, or our hope is in Jesus, not in government. True, our ultimate hope is in Christ. But here's the thing. Faith is not passive. It's lived out. We can't just sit back and let things fall apart, hoping for heaven to fix it. If the system is broken, we show up and make it better. As James 2:17 says, faith without good deeds is dead. Voting can be one of those good deeds. When we vote, we're not voting to save the world. Jesus has already done that. We're voting to reflect God's justice, mercy, and truth in the spaces we occupy. Micah 6:8 tells us to do what is right, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Voting gives us an opportunity to stand for what is right and bring godly values into policies that affect real lives. Issues like poverty, justice, education, and human dignity are not just political, they're biblical. The Bible also makes it clear that we are to love our neighbors. Mark 12:31. Voting is one way to protect the vulnerable and uphold what benefits the common good. When we ignore elections, we ignore the people who suffer under policies shaped without Christian input. Standing aside isn't love, it's indifference. Proverbs 31 verses 8-9 reminds us, speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Ensure justice for those being crushed. Some Christians worry about picking the wrong side. But here's the truth. No candidate or political party is perfect. Our job isn't to find perfection. It's to seek what aligns best with God's principles. That might mean voting for someone whose policies reflect biblical justice, even if their personal life falls short. Or it might mean supporting legislation that protects human dignity, even if it doesn't benefit us directly. We vote not for what serves us, but what serves others. Voting isn't the only way to make a difference, but it's a crucial one. It's a way of participating in the systems that shape the world our children will live in. Jesus called us to be the salt of the earth. Matthew 5:13. Salt preserves and brings out the best. It doesn't stay in the shaker. The ballot box is one place where our salt matters. At the end of the day, the goal isn't political power, it's faithful presence. Whether we win or lose, our trust remains in God. But choosing not to vote is still making a choice. Silence is a form of agreement with the status quo. And if the current system isn't honoring God, why would we sit back and allow it to continue unchecked? So yes, Christians should vote. Not because politics will save us, but because it's one of the ways we bring God's truth into the world. It's how we show up and make sure that righteousness, justice, and mercy have a voice in public policy. It's not about putting faith in government. It's about living out our faith, even when it's messy, complicated, and imperfect. The next election matters, not just to the country, but to the kingdom work we're called to do. The question isn't, what if my vote doesn't matter? The real question is, what kind of world will we create if I stay silent?